Welcome to ArcisFX Live.
Hi everyone, thanks for joining us. Pleasure to be here on this very curious Thursday. Lots going on with a lot of markets and lots going on in crypto. Everyone's throwing bones at each other. It's going to be quite interesting. Now, firstly, if you haven't checked out James's video, which was released earlier today, covering nat gas and all the other commodities and stocks, check it out. It's available right now on YouTube. Really great video, and very relevant, of course, to what's going on in crypto as well, because of course all of the markets are in the same basket to a degree at the moment, where we're trying to figure out what's happening and what's going on, with strategy under pressure, all kinds of issues with tether, lots of things going on. So check that video out as well. It's fantastic. I watched it earlier today. It's very, very insightful. So check that out. Right, and if you haven't already checked in with Bitcoin update early in the week, jump in on that, of course, as it's quite an interesting one this week. So it'll probably help orientate you to all the possibilities of 2026 for Bitcoin. But hi to everyone. Hi, Emily. And of course, ArcisFX. That might be James hiding behind there. Control Alt Alpha, great to have you here. Just the Arcis drone is just flying by. Yes, I'll be live. Yes, please drop your questions in the chat box and we'll jump into them. I have a few things to talk about today for sure. But let's start off with Ethereum versus Bitcoin. Okay, so let's just switch over. Right, so ultimately, Ethereum versus Bitcoin is relevant because typically the beginning of altcoin season starts with Ethereum outpacing Bitcoin, and we started to outpace Bitcoin. This process started to happen in April 2025, and then we started to lose momentum, a normal pullback, of course. We started to lose momentum at the back end of the summer, and now we have Ethereum versus Bitcoin sitting hi Lola, good morning. It's sitting currently at the POC and the 50 weekly, following a death cross, which occurred, of course, over a year ago, 18 months ago, and we may be having a potential golden cross in the coming months or so, if this plays out. Now, the reason why I'm pointing this out is there's a lot of questions about what happens to Ethereum if Bitcoin starts heading down from here. Now, obviously, if Ethereum holds pretty, it's going to outpace Bitcoin, and what does that mean for altcoins? Does that mean altcoins will then start to run? Because typically the money flow will start with people taking profits from Bitcoin, and they'll start to pivot into Ethereum and the top 15, top 20 cryptos. Think Hyperliquid, Solana, XRP, etc. Doge is now in that category as well. Can you believe it? And then the money cascade begins. Now, we had that to a degree, but then it's fizzled out. Right, and because essentially Ethereum's progress versus Bitcoin fizzled out. So it's going to be very interesting about the conversations with regard to what is going to happen with Bitcoin. Is it going to have a bear year next year? Is it going to be a shortened bear year? Is it going to be a full year? What's it going to be? Is Bitcoin versus gold going to be the dominant factor in driving Bitcoin's recovery in the next few months? Who knows, right? And again, check out Bitcoin Update, because we try and scratch the surface on this as well. And James is talking a lot about this as well, and it's a very interesting topic. So again, check out that video he's just released today. But this could mean that if Bitcoin starts to retrace a little bit and maybe doesn't have much bullish price action, maybe it comes all the way back down to 70, 69K, maybe even a bit lower than that. I think 50K, 49, 50K is kind of the bottom for any possible bear market ideas. But what if Ethereum then just starts to shrug off Bitcoin? And it's because altcoin, we haven't had a proper altcoin season, and Ethereum starts to lead the pack. It starts outpacing Bitcoin again, which it will if it holds its own compared to Bitcoin selling off. And then people take their profits, they put it into Ethereum. There's lots of mainstream ETFs and all kinds of investment funds for Ethereum now, as well as a lot of the top 10 cryptos. So the money starts pivoting into them, right? And mainstream adoption is certainly well on its way to encompassing the top 10, top 20 cryptos for sure, right? So then we have a decoupling of sorts, which would allow maybe an altcoin season to occur because people will take the Bitcoin profits. Or rather, they'll take all of MicroStrategy's liquidation money and and put it into Ethereum and Solana, etc. And then they start to move, and then people take profits from them, and they put it into some of the mid caps, and then people take profits from the mid cap trades, which typically happen quicker. You can turn around 100% profits on a mid cap in a few weeks when things are running, and then those profits get pivoted into the low caps, which then give us thousands of percent gains, and we have our altcoin season. While Bitcoin is sitting around, I don't know, 60K or something, just going, what about me, right? And then Ethereum will go, well, I'm the queen, but maybe I want to be king. And we can maybe get a decoupling, and it goes into the narrative that Bitcoin may be Bitcoin may start becoming the elder statesman of crypto, and really Ethereum starts to lead the pack, or maybe something else. Maybe it's Zcash, who knows, right? But this is quite an interesting chart. Now, it'll be interesting. And the interesting thing is, again, not necessarily the TA here, but what's going to happen to this and Ethereum when Bitcoin sells off. So we're going to be paying attention to this chart for sure over the coming weeks and months, as it may be quite insightful and helpful to understand exactly what's going to be happening with the money flow, and maybe whether or not altcoin season is going to happen. Turning to Bitcoin Monthly, just very briefly. Hi, Lucky. Thanks for being here. Really appreciate you being here. So we've obviously had this wick below this very important trend line, which has been in place for March 2013, blah, blah, blah. We've been talking about this for a while. Now, the best scenario for Bitcoin now, if you are one of the ones who is hoping for a recovery or believes in a recovery here, is that we get the next candle body close in December to ultimately be above this line. Now, right now, it's not looking great, but Bitcoin's got a lot of work to do. But if we can get a candle body close, then the bulls are then only contending with a wick, right, as opposed to a candle body close. Now, we've had lots of bearish signals continue to stack up. This would be another one. This would be a very bad one, right? And for those of you who are keen to have de facto signals about capitulation and what happens, right? These are the sort of things you need to be paying attention to. Now, weeks ago, we were talking about the weekly candle body close below the 50 MA. This is the monthly chart, right? We were talking about that, right? Let me just see if I can load that chart up. Just have a quick look. I think I did rename it today. You can see very poorly organized things. Let's have a look. Weekly 50, yes. Find it a little bit more organized. Okay, so we were talking up here when Bitcoin was about, between about 109, 110, and 105. We were talking about the fact that if we get a candle body close below the weekly 50 MA, that's a seriously bearish signal, right? Now, that isn't, and that is the signal for lower prices, right? So when we talk about this, that is the signal. That is what we're talking about. That is us saying, we're going to have some more downside from Bitcoin. Be careful, right? There's never, and it's never going to be on one, you wake up one day and it's going to be right. That's it. Bitcoin's going down. We're going to have a major capitulation event. It's going to be crashing and that's it. It doesn't work like that. We have major signals, which we have to look for bearish scenarios. And when we see them start to stack up, then the bearish case builds, and then the buyers disappear and the short sellers appear. And then pressure mounts on companies like Strategy and people who are pretty seriously investing in Bitcoin. And then that's what all the fervor is at the moment. So you as traders need to be paying attention to these sort of signals and the sort of signals which commentators are talking about, because ultimately they decide whether we have upside continuation or not. And again, weeks ago, we were talking about this. We had the candle body close, and there we go. We move down. That's your signal. That's your signal. We're going to have more downside. So, if you're waiting for somebody to just wake up one morning and say, right, Bitcoin's going down, it's not going to happen. And if they are, they can't say with any authority, because by the time we have, say, 6 serious higher time frame bearish signals, we're already in a bear market. We're already approaching the bottom, right? So this is the whole scenario for Bitcoin. But let's have a look. Let's have a quick look and see what's going on with Bitcoin. So this is Bitcoin 2-week. Firstly, do have some hidden bullish divergence, which has been cropping up quite a lot, and that seems to be playing out at the moment. Now, if it plays out as it has previously, then we could be putting in all new highs in a few months, right? Based on this one chart, but this is just one bullish signal in the sea of quite a lot of bearish ones. Right now, this chart seems to be the most relevant at the moment for Bitcoin. Now, this is a I honestly, when I was reading an article about this a few days ago, excuse me, oh, that's good coffee. That's really nice. It's quite cold here in the UK at the moment. So when I was reading an article about this a couple of days ago, I was looking at the price chart. I'm like, what? I can't see an inverse head and shoulders. And then I managed to track down someone's description of it, and then managed to chart this out. And people would look at this, even I looked at this with skepticism and said, really? I mean, what is that? The Hunchback of Notre Dame? I'm like, what is this? Right. So, but the important thing to recognize is that certainly with crypto, in fact, any asset, you're not going to get the textbook examples. What's important is the psychology behind these reversal patterns, right? So we had the left shoulder formed by this dip, and then we retrace back upwards, which defines the neckline. We then have a deeper dip. We then come back up and test the neckline. Then we have another dip, the right shoulder, lesser dip than the head is what we want, right? I mean, typically the left and the right will have parity, but not always. And then we come back up to the neckline, and you see the neckline has been respected. So this is a legitimate pattern. And what we're waiting for ultimately would be higher time frame confirmation of a break above the neckline. And because we've obviously seen on the lower time frames, which we'll get into a little bit in a minute, that Bitcoin is starting to change its trend. I'm not going to even try and flip to it right now, by putting in a higher high just a few days ago on the back of a higher low, which is the first kind of signal we need. But that was on like the 4-hour chart, whereas the 2-hour chart will carry a lot more significance in terms of upwards momentum. And as we can see, this is the measured move for this pattern. So what you want to be looking for, right, is not for somebody on YouTube to be saying to you, buy Bitcoin now. You want to be waiting yourself as a budding trader for a signal to trade off, right? And there is a difference. There's a difference to that, because an opinion is not something you can necessarily trade off, but a candle body close above an inverse head and shoulders on the 12-hour is, and that's the subtlety there. So we're looking for a candle body close above this to confirm potentially more upside for Bitcoin, which could take us up to 106K, which would be significant recovery. So that would be awesome. But if you are looking for a signal that we're going to have more downside, if, of course, this pattern could very easily invalidate if we start coming back down here again. Okay, so again, haven't had the breakout yet, but if we do, that would be a bullish signal, which would be very helpful for the bulls who are supportive of a recovery. So that's a great little chart. Check it out. It's pretty cool. Right, now let's look at what Bitcoin has been doing on the short term. And this is the chart I was scared to try and find. So just soak that up while I have some coffee, because it's very cold here. My dog is all wrapped up in a little bundle. So again, this is the thing. So I will get questions all of the time which say, what's Bitcoin going to do next? And I'll be and it's like, well, let me just look in my crystal ball, right? The way I will answer those questions is very simple. I will say to you, if you have confirmation of a trend change, that will be your first signal of a possible reversal. That's the first signal to trade off. Now, some traders will trade off the first higher low. And if they had traded off that, maybe if they broke the neckline here, so higher low, and then just break that swing, then maybe they would have had a nice 8% by now. Great. But other people will wait for the higher high as well. And that will be 2 signals, and then they'll enter, right? And then I, as an example, will want to see a more significant stamp of approval for this higher high, because it is. Paul, show the dog. She's upstairs because she just barks. I'm sorry. Maybe another time. I don't want to. She'll hog the limelight. She's much more attractive than I am, for sure. She's a lovely dog. She's a rescue from Uruguay, so she's done a lot of traveling. But she doesn't do well with cameras either. She doesn't understand them or know what they are. But anyway, what I want to see for a higher high here is, because they're not all created equal, I want to see, because this is essentially the equivalent of a World War II soldier popping his head above the parapet, right? It's probably going to come back down, which is what's happening. So I want to see a more significant move up. So as I was saying in the group earlier or yesterday, I think is what we want to see is, or in the members live stream with James, I can't remember, we want to see a move up to at least 96k, the next level of resistance. So at least then we've got some retrace, some air for a retrace, and that gives us something to do in terms of coming in, maybe then flush with the 3-day 200 MA, which is 89k. And then the answer to the question, what's the deal with Bitcoin? It is, well, once you see these signals, then this. And if you don't see this, then this. So what I would say is, if we see a move up to 96k now, then an entrance along around 89k, which is a significant level on higher time frames, with confidence of 3-day 200 MA, then comes a nice place in terms of probabilities to look to come in on. But if we don't get a move up to 96k and it just dribbles down from here, 89k is not necessarily as strong a premise for a bounce from there, because of course we just haven't come up and we haven't properly had a rubber stamp on that higher high, and therefore my hesitancy to coming at that level would be significant. So I might say that 86k would be a better level to come in on, right? And so it's all about context, and we as traders need to be able to understand that not all higher highs are created equal, not all higher lows, and be able to interpret this information. And the signals we get will determine where the best place to come in is. And that will only happen once we see some of these moves. So there's never going, if anyone says to you, I'm guaranteed Bitcoin's going to turn around from here, right? Then you have to ask them this question, based on what, right? And if they don't have an answer, then it's just an opinion or it's just a guess. Whereas now we have some signals, we have something to trade off. But also, until we see slightly higher move up from here, a slightly more concrete higher high, we could still be coming all the way back down to local support and even mainstream support, a heavy support at 75 to 73k, which we haven't touched yet, will still be on the cards. But the higher Bitcoin goes from here, right, for that higher high, which we've put in, the easier it is to find a place for us to come in on. And the easiest place right now is 89k, but not if Bitcoin comes down from where it is. It needs to come up a little bit first, and then that makes that retrace make a lot more sense. And again, it's no guarantee that the price action will then bounce off 89k, but if you're only giving it a small area to retrace from, the likelihood of the sellers being exhausted is not as great as if the selling activity starts from up here. So there's typical retraces in crypto, what, 40 to 60% is what we're looking for. And and this is the whole game. So you need to be able to interpret the charts yourself. You need to be able to look at the signals yourself and then determine where is the best entry point, because it moves based on what the price action was preceding it. And that's the most important thing. So that's Bitcoin. Ideally, we need to see a move up from here. But the most important thing now is, at the very least, whatever we do, whenever we come down, we have at least another higher low. And that will maybe, again, increase the probability that we'll have another higher high on the back of that. But if we come back down here, put in a lower low, it invalidates the change in the trend, right? Even if it is a fake change of character, which essentially is just a liquidity hunt before it reverses. It's right. We need more concrete signals. So that is what I'd say about that. Let's have a look. Paul, show the dog. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Check the super chat goal if you want to win. Ooh, a super chat goal. Right. That sounds interesting. What's that? Oh, and a welcome. Gifted. We've gifted an Arcis membership. That's fantastic. Have we given ourselves a membership? Right. I didn't know we could do that. I want one. I want a membership. Right. So, but what I want to talk about today is a few things. And one of them is I've just got started on. So let's talk about, firstly, can you trade signals in crypto? Can you trade signals in crypto in terms of, can you wake up one morning and have somebody say, buy Ethereum here, and then go and do it, and it can play out, right? How is that going to work, right? So I want to get into this. It's very, very important, and there's a level of orientation to any kind of trading community, or on YouTube or otherwise, or in the private group, to how we're supposed to trade certain asset classes. As an example, I would imagine that the people who trade natural gas have a different style to perhaps more traditional commodities traders, right? I'm just throwing that out there, right? But certainly with crypto, you need a very unique approach. And signal trading, where you just like see somebody on the Telegram channel say, buy Ethereum here, it's guaranteed to go up, does not make sense. And let me explain why. Firstly, Bitcoin and crypto is 24/7. It's 24/7. And you will never be able to get somebody, you'll never be able to get somebody who is essentially by your side, holding your hand, me or James or anybody or any kind of group, which can be there to give you the signals and the update and the context in those specific moments, right? Because ultimately, you know, we have to sleep at some time. So what are you going to do, right? Because, and this is the key thing, the market changes every hour, every day. And as we were just talking about with Bitcoin, the context also changes from minute to minute. And you need to adapt your entrances, your take profits, even your stop losses and your position size, depending on what we're getting. So what we're talking about today might not be correct in a few hours' time. And we need to be able to independently assess that to make sure. Therefore, trading signals in crypto is very, very challenging, which is why we have detailed charts with multiple scenarios. And let's see if I can find one which gives us an example. Start your timers, people. How long does it find me to take to find a relevant chart? That's just so many setups. Let's have a look. Let's have a look. Here we go. Here we go. This is a good example. So this is Sol, right? We're going to talk about this in altcoin gems tomorrow. So just soak up this chart for a moment. Right. So we have a double bottom, right? That double bottom is there. It is undeniable. It is there. So we can say, right, we have a double bottom. Sol is providing potential trading opportunities because it's giving us the first sign of a reversal from a downtrend to an uptrend, which is the exact sort of thing traders want to be capitalizing on to make money. Okay. So we post a chart which says Sol, double bottom. We highlight the neckline and potential take profit points. But why is there two? Why is there two? Right? I'm sorry, I've just seen Emily saying happy early Christmas. Emily, you don't know I'm such a Scrooge about early Christmas. If I hear Christmas music in a supermarket before the 24th of December, I freak out. Right? I just so yes, happy early Christmas to everybody. But yes, I am a bit of a Scrooge, so I apologize for that in advance. You're not going to have any snowflakes on my charts in December, I can tell you that much. Right? Oh yes, the Crypto Grinch. Let's change my name. That might be better than Crypto Paul. Yeah, this month it's going to be Crypto Grinch. I like that. That's pretty funny. Right. But the point I was trying to make anyway is we have two generic standard kind of approaches to this trade, right? And it's contextually dependent. So we post this chart and we'll say this, right? Again, we've got this parapet sort of thing going on here where this is the neckline. We have eked out above the neckline, but ultimately it's not a significant enough move to allow sellers to be exhausted and then buyers to come in. Therefore, we've got this lower line, which is essentially on in the middle of this pattern. So this is the big picture. If I just zoom out slightly, right? I think this is the big picture chart. Yeah, here's the big picture. So there's the big picture. So we highlight the big picture. We highlight the weekly chart. We show that this is a good opportunity, a nice little buy zone here, and then we zoom in, right? And there's this double bottom we've got, and we know on the higher time frame we've got significant support here, which has been in play for a while. There we go. Okay, but you come to trade this, and you're like, right, okay. Well, I haven't had a proper breakout because you need to understand what breakouts are, right? And you need to realize that, okay, so right now, this entrance is in play. This entrance is in play because we haven't had a strong breakout. It's not sufficient for me to come in on the retest like that, right? It's not, right? Which would be this setup here. That would be your entry point, and that would be your stop loss, and that would be a take profit, okay? But right now, this is the entry, is the best entry, right? Which comes in flush with this, and there's nice confluence. So it could be a triple bottom, right? And then you would take profits here, not here, because if Solana retraces back down here, then the probabilities of it busting up into this range and this range are less, right? Whereas if we get a breakout of Sol, which is more significant, then this setup, this entry point makes more sense, and therefore this TP is more contextually relevant because it's easier on the back of this bullish move, which has already made progress in this range, for us to think that maybe we can get into the next one based on this bullish further. But if we come back down here, then we're not necessarily going to be able to make it back on there because coming all the way back down here is essentially a failed breakout. And even though we've got another option to enter and support it, especially because we didn't quite touch it here and we could form a triple bottom, right? And the point I'm trying to make is, you in the moment have to assess the price action yourself. And some people will be much more preferable to support buys because they're easy to manage in terms of risk management. So for example, if you come in here and you lose the level, then you've got an out, right, which is more flexible. So some people prefer support plays, right? And right now, this is all I'm doing. I'm just doing hard support plays because it's the safest, most manageable in uncertain terms, right? But other people may not like doing that. Other people may be just hardcore breakout traders, right? And therefore, this is the setup which they prefer. So it's not just about what is appropriate for the market. It's also about appropriate to your strategy. And if you're just following other people's strategy, right, then you're going to lose. You're going to lose. So I could say to you, right, Sol is a great place to buy at 142.95, but only if we see this, and only if we see that, right? And you need to understand what to look for, and we'll tell you, and we'll say we need to see, as I've just said, we need to see a higher break, right, before we come back down. But you need to be able to manage that yourself as a trader, because what are we trying to achieve? Why do people get into crypto? Why do people get into trading, right? Because they want to make life-changing money. Now, they might think for them life-changing money is a Lamborghini, right? But it's not. Life-changing money is at the reality, in a cold, hard reality, is ultimately sustainability. Knowing that if you lose your job, you have some income. You can trade, you can make money, you do have a pot which can bring in stuff, right? Or you know that when you want to start investing some of your savings or start preparing for your pension or whatever, you have skills, you have an ability to know and assess what's good to invest in, when's the best time to invest, when's the best time to get out, because you are an independent trader which understands the context and of course can look at a chart and figure out the best way to do it. It's about that. That's what life-changing money is. It's about having a revenue stream in your back pocket you can always rely on, right? And even, of course, sometimes the market is going to be terrible, right? And maybe you're not massively experienced in the market, right? And maybe you've only got a couple of things in your tool belt which you're good at trading. Maybe just you're good at reversal patterns, or you're just good at buying hard support and identifying that, and that's all you wait for. That's fine. But life-changing money is about not being given a fish day after day after day. It's about learning to fish yourself. And what we want to do, and I know it's such an old cliche, but it's true and it's still very relevant. And what we try to do here at Arcis is to give you as much information and insight and parameters and context and opportunities, all of that, to give you the best possible options, the best possible scenarios, so you don't have to be searching for charts. You don't have to be searching through the tens of thousands of cryptos and trying to make sense of, what cotton is doing compared to copper. We do that for you. So you can go through all of the different setups which James is trading and all of his signals and so forth and what he's suggesting, because he'll constantly update about what he's trading and what he's changing, highlighting the fact that you have to be nimble and you can't be ultimately the one trying to follow everyone else's signals because it's too late after the fact. So we provide, and other groups and so forth, and traders will provide all of this information so you can just essentially window shop. Oh, I don't like XRP. I don't like Hyperliquid. I like that because that's good because I like trading those setups. I like those double bottom plays. I'm taking that one. Oh, and I like Cuban handles, and XRP's got a Cuban handle. I like that one. And this is the game. This is the whole game. But imagine a scenario where all of a sudden you are unable to get access to the resources of whatever trading group you're in. Hopefully it's Arcis. Would love to have you. It's a great community which James has built. What happens to you? Are you able to trade independently by yourself? And that's the question, isn't it? And what's the answer? And if the answer is yes, then great. That's awesome, because then we're just making your life easier. But if the answer is no, then what are you achieving? You're not achieving life-changing money, because ultimately, you're going to need somebody at all times, those stabilizers on your bike to help you. Now, I'm not saying this to be disparaging, not at all, because my goal with all my students and all the support we try to give people at Arcis and on YouTube and so forth, is because we want you to be, sustainable traders, to be successful over and over again. And when I am long gone, dead and buried, right, you're still making money, right? And that's the most important thing. So it's very important. And I remember when I first started off, and someone was put, my mentor would put a chart in front of me, and I'll be like, just tell me where to buy. Just tell me where to buy. I haven't got time for this, right? But the reality is that I wouldn't be here now, and I wouldn't have the opportunities, I wouldn't have the experience and the finances, right? If I hadn't taken those hammer blows over my head where he's saying, listen to me, copy my charts, learn what I'm doing, right? Figure out all these patterns, learn to be independent, spend a couple of years with me holding your hand, teaching you the ropes by looking at the scenarios and showing you all the trades, the failed ones as well, and then go out on your own. And that's what we're essentially trying to do for everybody. But we can't do that if we're waiting for these, the hand-holding signals, which is like buy, sell here, because it's never as simple as that. It just isn't. And when crypto, especially, is 24/7 highly volatile, you've got to be adaptive. Because if you are saying to yourself, well, this trade is this stop loss, it's this take profit, it's this entry, then what are you going to do when the market shifts? How are you going to change it? I'm in bed. James is asleep, right? What are you going to do, right? And ultimately, the reality is as well, your stop loss, your risk reward, that's your strategy, that's your approach, right? And you adapt all of these things, and the TP and the stop losses and all of these things, and whether you scale in the scale out, depending on your own capital, how much you're trading with, whether it's leveraged or what, right? And that's the whole thing. So we don't know how you want to trade. We don't know how you want to do this, and this is it. So crypto trading, you've got to be sustainable, you've got to be adaptive, and that requires you to develop certain skills, right? And it starts with charting. Now, in the group, and even on YouTube, when I've been doing altcoin gems, I will post the charts for people to access so they don't have to do it, right? Now, I made that decision, but the person who taught me would never do that, because ultimately he wants you to learn through doing, right? So I'm not sure if that's a good idea, what I'm doing, making it easy for everybody. But the reality is that I do want to make it easy for people. I do want to make it easy, but you've also got to take responsibility. And I think that's one of the most important things we need to be discussing, because ultimately you want to trade Sol, you want to trade Sol successfully, then take the chart and run with it, right? Run away from me and do your own thing with it, right? That's because you might see something which I don't, right? There's other patterns here, right? There's other patterns here which I haven't identified, right? Let's have a look. Let's see what else we got. Oh, look, there's another pattern, right? There's another factor, right? Something to take into account, right? There's moving averages I haven't put on here, which you might want to explore, right? All of these sorts of things. So there's always multiple perspectives. Super, 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 super important, right? And this is only out of respect for everybody, because I want everybody, as James does, to be super successful, right? And here's the thing. How do you build a good community, right? Do you just have two people telling you what to do, or do you have everybody offering insight? And that's the key. And that's what we're trying to build. And that's what essentially James has built at ArcisFX. And it is fantastic. But for new members who want to join, this is the game, right? We're going to give you some fish to eat. We're going to make sure you don't go hungry. But at the end of the day, you need to go out there with your own fishing rod, your own tackle, your own bait, your own box. You've got to sit down in your own chair with your own lunch, and you're going to fish yourself, ultimately. We'll show you which river. We'll show you what the best thing to do is. But ultimately, that is the game. Now, I wanted to just get that off my chest, because I think it's really, really important, right? But now let's have a look at some of the charts, as I think I've exhausted let's just catch up with some of the catch up with some of the things. Crypto Grinch sounds nice. Now we know who has been stealing the Christmas rally. Yep, it was me. It was me. Look, this is a Bitcoin I stole from Strategy. Yes. I am a Grinch. Right. Okay. Let's have a look. What else we got? Knowledge is to be shared and actioned. Yeah. Maybe. Look, I mean, this is just the way I look at it, right? It's just a practical thing. It's genuinely a practical thing, right? It's just how do you possibly do this? How do you possibly trade? It's like my wonderful girlfriend. She's been learning to trade recently, right? And sometimes I think she wants to slap me around the face, right? When I say to her, like, she'll say, "What do I do?" And I'm like, "I don't know. What's your plan?" I think she just wants to punch me. But why am I saying that? right? I'm saying that because ultimately, right, she needs to make that decision herself. And guess what? She has gone away and made the decisions herself, and she's managing her own trade, and she's learning independence as a result of that. And already she's a step up of other traders simply because of that, right? So really cool thing to discuss. But let's just hear from James just while I have another sip of coffee.
Hi there, I'm James. I'm the founder of ArcisFX. I'd like to personally invite you to join our 24/7 trading group. This is built for traders who want an edge. Inside, you'll get access to live calls on Forex, commodities, crypto, energies, and metals, along with exclusive daily analysis designed to unlock your trading potential. And this in both traditional and now in digital markets. I'm talking Bitcoin, crypto, altcoins, and tethered currencies. You'll gain early access to insider news, real-time updates, real-time support, and premium educational content. If you want to sharpen your skills and boost your success rate, then join me and Paul in this community. This is a fast-growing community of traders who are now writing their own success stories. So don't wait. Join up now. Your edge starts right here.
Okay, so we're going to check out this setup just in a moment. And we've had some awesome content. Thank you, 6G SF, for being here. It's great to have you. Thanks. But let's just address your comment just for a moment. Okay, my girlfriend, I tell her a lot of things which deserve a slap. I can tell you that much. Do you tell her you entered the trade 2 days ago? Why didn't she? No, I don't know what you mean by that. I'm going to be honest. I don't know what you mean by that. Do you tell her you entered the trade 2 days ago? Why didn't she? Could maybe just clarify that, and maybe we can get into that a bit. I'm not quite sure what you're referring to there. Entered the trade 2 days ago. Why didn't she? No, I wouldn't say that. That would be really derogatory and unhelpful. No, but maybe you can clarify what you meant. Sorry if I misunderstood that, and maybe I can give you a better answer. Right. Anyway, API 3. Let's jump into this. This is a setup I've just found today and just charted it, and let's have a look. So this is a downwards. We have a couple of different lines here for the channel, and it's a little bit of a mess. Of course, this is the October crash. We try to ignore that in the channel, but again, we do have a nice double bottom. There's a lot of these descending wedges at the moment, and we've got this lovely confluence here with the 200 MA on the 4 hour. So the instruction would be very broad: buy the breakout of the channel with the 200 MA. Now, what does that mean? So it means ultimately you're looking for a move, not just out of the channel, but also a clear move out above the 200 MA, because this is essentially one group of sellers here on this little line, one group of sellers here, and one group of sellers on the 200 MA. Right. So this is great. This is essentially having your opposing, it's very warlike, essentially soldiers you're fighting all lining up. It's very easy to take them all out in one shot. And this is why we like this sort of confluence plays, because if we got rid of all the moving averages, it wouldn't just be a bullish setup. So we've got a double bottom. We've got a slightly higher low, which is fantastic. We also have a sort of a fake out here, lots of fake outs. And let's just see where we are. And we are at all-time support. So this setup is ultimately the combination of a double bottom at long-term support with this red invalidation line at the bottom of a potential pattern. And if we see a breakout from here, it's a really good setup in terms of probabilities, right? It's very Bitcoin dependent, but ultimately you're going to have buyers coming in on the flip side of this because we're so low. This is why the double bottom is formed essentially at this bottom, because buyers are coming in here, and it's where buyers start to essentially exhaust sellers. So the trading setup would be you're looking for a breakout, right, into this range. And you also need to assess the market. And if Bitcoin is a little bit more bullish next week, then you can be a little bit less cautious with your approach. Again, context is everything, right? So you want to see a breakout. You also want to see a breakout above the 200 MA. So if you see something little like this, no bueno. So you want to essentially break out, ideally into the upper range. These are the criteria which I trade with. What's your criteria for a breakout, right? Do you have one, right? But this is my breakout, okay? I want to see a move up into the upper range because it gives me two things. It gives me, one, a strong bullish move, which other people will see, and long traders will then look to come in on the next retrace. But also, it surpasses this previous swing high, which then confirms the change in the trend on the back of that higher low, which is what we're talking about with Bitcoin. So we have a higher low, we have a breakout of a pattern and a key moving average, and on top of that, we have a higher high. That will attract buyers to the market. And if that happens, of course, that also implies that the market is a bit bullish because API 3 isn't going to break out really, typically, unless Bitcoin is going to give it permission to do so. And if Bitcoin heads down from where it is now, this will come down here and maybe potentially, excuse me, invalidate. But this is a scenario. Context is important. And therefore, we then have a retrace potentially. And maybe, you know, if the market's really hesitant, which it is, you're looking for as low as you possibly can. Maybe not the invalidation line, because of course that would be too low and that might be a bit risky. You've got too much resistance overhead. So you say, right, okay, so if I start seeing a bounce from here, maybe I'll look for another one, and then we come in and then we're in a trade, right? And again, if you see the market is turning a little bit more bearish, then what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Well, you're going to change your TP, right? And therefore, the TP, which I suggested now, excuse me, apologies, the TP which I suggested originally will be different because ultimately the market has changed. Or you may feel that, you know, if you get such a stupid, crazy breakout like this, right, and then you look to come back in on the retrace, then maybe you say to yourself, oh, actually, this is super bullish now, and maybe we're going to go up even higher, and then you can increase your TP, right? So you've got to be able to manage it. Excuse me, I'm just going to mute it for a second because I'm really tickly. Hang on. So sorry about that. That's extremely unattractive. So this is the whole game, but this is a lovely little setup. Now, is this setup guaranteed to go to that TP? No. Has it got the potential? Yes, absolutely. We look at previous volatility and we look at the kind of bullish moves which we've put in once the market turns. Absolutely. In fact, it's quite a conservative TP, right? And other people, some of you may think, you know what, Paul, Crypto Grinch, right? Actually, that's a super conservative take profit for this sort of asset, which is clearly, you know, not a particularly high market cap because putting all of these moves, and really I'm going to put my TP up here, right? So screw you, Paul, what do you know, right? Stop being so safe, right? And there you go, you're trading it your own way, right? That's the important thing. So this setup right now is a potential trading opportunity. And then when we get a breakout, me or James or whoever will then post the chart and say, look, API is breaking out. And then we'll assess the market and we'll say, look, this is the safest option to come in on. Or if the market's a little bit more bullish, we might say, we'll just come in on the 200 MA and here are your options. And then you make the decision. But this is a really good setup, which is coming into play. But be mindful, of course, when you're not dealing with high caps, there's a lot of volatility. And if you this was the October crash, right? So don't think for a second this double bottom can't be invalidated. But why is it important where we are now? Because if you ignore the October crash, it's at the bottom. So there's a little setup, and just to build on what we were talking about as well at the moment. Let's see what else we got going on. Link. Okay, another great example. So this is Chainlink, right? This was the top altcoin gem, old language from last week. Now, this is a slightly different perspective. We did have a nice move, but now we want to catch the next one. So I posted this in group today. And we've essentially got these two entrance points, right? These two possible scenarios, right? Now you've got to decide, right? And how do you decide? So we've got the double bottom, we've got a neckline, we've got a confirm break, which we were just talking about. We want to see from API, right? Great, super duper, if that was the name of it. I can't remember. Okay. So if now you see Bitcoin bust up to maybe 96K to confirm that higher high, which gives us a little bit more bullish thing, because it shows that buyers are coming in at this hesitation point, which would be good. Then you can say to yourself, okay, the likelihood of Link coming all the way back down to here, our lowest possible entry point, is not great, right? And therefore, I'm just going to come in on the double bottom neckline, which is pretty good textbook TA, and I'm going to try and use this setup and take profits here. But if I see Bitcoin is still struggling, and we're maybe talking about, well, are we going to see another higher low or another lower low because it's retracing? Then you might think, okay, the market's too cautious, the market's too hesitant. Therefore, I'm going to wait for the lower trend line and I look at this position to enter and so forth, right? And this one is a good play as well because we've got confluence as well here. So, you know, there's two really good options for Link for sure. Are they guaranteed to play out? No. If the market continues lower and crashes, will we come down? Yes, for sure. But this has got some attention from buyers. You can see the action of the double bottom, and now if you prefer scaling in, you don't have to choose between the two. You can just scale in. You can say, okay, I'm going to come in here, right? Because I have no idea what Bitcoin's doing. And then you can say, okay, if I get a bounce from here, great. I'm in profit, not as big as I wanted, but there you go. But then if it heads down, you can enter again here. It's really good. And then try and scoop up that setup, right? Which gives you more options in terms of risk management, because of course, if something happens in the market, you can use the profits from this position to offset the losses from this one and exit at a lower price point, as opposed to entering your entire position here, which if the market heads down means you're always in a guaranteed loss regardless of whatever you do, right? But Link is a really good setup, and that's an option. And I think, let me see what I've got on the agenda for altcoin gems tomorrow. Haven't quite locked down the coins yet, but Link will definitely be discussed tomorrow in more detail. Lola, you're stuck in ADA, is that right? Right, let me have a look at ADA, right? Okay, you're stuck in ADA. Let's have a quick look at ADA. I'll get to that in a second. Is there an idea for when the crypto Bitcoin market will be more stable? I'm investing in BTC, XRP, ADA. Well, look, it is the crypto and stable, two words I don't often hear together. When we open with the Ethereum chart, right? And we were talking about the and let me load up the others altcoin chart, and I think so. Let's have a quick look. Others. Here we go. So this is the interesting scenario at the moment, right? So we have a situation where the altcoins haven't properly moved yet, but we have potential signals that Bitcoin has got more downside and they might be entering a bear market, right? It's really difficult, conflicting signs. And how do we figure that out? How do we know what's going to happen? So I can't tell you, when the market is going to stabilize, because ultimately, it's a slave to many factors at the moment. And the whole market, all markets have been rocked this year because of tariffs, the trade war, all of these sorts of things. So it's a very complicated thing. But what we want to see, of course, is potentially interest rate cuts, which will then, make it a little bit easier for risk assets potentially. So we're looking for, of course, improved economic conditions. I mean, look, and just ask yourself this: what happens if we get a resolution to the war in Ukraine? Right? What happens if that happens? Right? That could be an extremely stabilizing factor for markets, because there's all these horrible things which have been happening for such a long time now, and they really do impact the markets, because you've got, and again, like we've got issues with the potential war with Venezuela as well with the United States, and even though that shouldn't impact crypto, uncertainty, war, all of these things have a massive impact. They have a roll-off impact. Venezuela is an oil producer, as an example. So there's hundreds and multiple factors. So what we really want to see: stable economy, stable world economies, right? We want to see all of that stabilizing, less wars, less trade wars, all of these things, right? And then we should have the stability we need. This is the key point, I think, the stability we need for things like XRP, ADA to move, because ultimately Bitcoin is a resilient asset, which means it's had 2.5 years of bullish momentum, which shows that it has a lot of resilience and it's very strong. But what the altcoins require, including Ethereum, we need ultimately for risk assets, always for risk assets, which is what everything aside from Bitcoin is considered and earmarked, is labeled. We need to see stable economies, right? Stable inflation, lowering prices, all of these things, right? We need to see, which will then allow altcoins to have their run. And the argument is that we haven't seen a bull run for altcoins because they are risk assets and everything has been crazy town, right? Extremely unpredictable. One month it's China tariffs, the next month they're off, they're on, they're off, all of these sorts of things, right? And that is awful for altcoins. So I think the answer is, they'll be more stable when everything else is, right? And that may seem like such a cop-out answer, but it's just the reality of how risk assets work, right? Now, there is another question. If we have a strengthening dollar, right, how's that going to affect risk assets as well, right? It's a complicated picture. And honestly, it's too much, I think, for any one mind to properly handle, because they're constantly changing all of the time. But all I can say is that what I am seeing and what me and James have been investigating and what I've been exploring in Bitcoin Update the last few weeks has been all of the different possibilities. And one thing that is guaranteed in everything in life, including trading and including in crypto, is that crypto is not the same today as it was 4 years ago, and it will not be the same next year as it was this year, right? We know that, right? So we have had a terrible year in terms of stability, and that is reflected in the markets. I don't think we're talking about the fact that the markets have been unstable because of any fundamental problems with the crypto market. In fact, you've got to think about it this way. We've got lots of regulation coming down the pipe. We've got an SEC in the United States, which is much more bullish on Bitcoin, regardless of whether you think it's just for corruption purposes or not. All of this sort of stuff. So we have the bed being laid, right, for institutional adoption of altcoins, right, and all of this kind of stuff, as well as more assets being on traditional marketplaces and all kinds of stuff, all kinds of tokenized assets, tokenized trading, all this kind of is very, very exciting, right? Solana as well is making massive strides in terms of being able to trade traditional assets on its blockchain. There is so much exciting things and lots of different signposts which suggest that Bitcoin is going to not lose its kingship, but just step down and be an elder statesman, be digital gold, and then the rest of the crypto will diverge slightly and have its own day and will run on its own merits, right? And then all the nonsense coins and the shit tokens, right? All of those things, right? They will move on the structure and the bullishness of things like ZEC, Zcash, Ethereum, XRP, all of these things. And that will come on the back of economic stability, which we're hoping we'll start to see next year. But again, it's not simple. As I just said, if the dollar starts strengthening, that's not necessarily what we want to see for risk assets. So everything is changing for sure. And I would argue that altcoins will be much more resilient, much more resilient as risk assets once institutional take up and all of this kind of, the use case. I mean, you've got to think about the use cases, right? Like the Solana blockchain being used as the number one network essentially for trading tokenized stocks. I mean, that's something we weren't 4 years ago, and therefore there is a lot of these movements finally standing up on their own 2 feet and looking at Bitcoin and says, you know what, I can stand on my own. And XRP, the same thing. And we're seeing all of this. And the stablecoin wars. I mean, I've got on my notes to talk about Tether today. Obviously, Tether is being scrutinized again quite significantly about how stable it is when pegged to the dollar. How do I just turn this off? How stable it is when pegged to the dollar. Now, I was talking with James about this earlier today, and every now and again, Tether is a punching bag, ultimately. And I'm not suggesting that it's in great shape. I'm not suggesting that it's Tether is as transparent as they need to be about their resourcing and all the capital they're using to, of course, maintain this peg to the dollar. But every few years, there's always a lot of talk about this, and there's always a lot of concern. The only thing you need to focus on with Tether, ultimately, is any signs of a depegging. So any signs of consistent moves below like 0.955 or something like that, right? But ultimately, and all of this bashing of Tether is in the context of the stablecoin wars, where essentially Tether is probably just going to be one of a pack in the future. We have USDC now as well, which is up and coming, and the European Union is trying to move away from Tether as well. So there's a lot of punching different stablecoins because everyone wants their own. The US wants their own stablecoin. China probably wants their own stablecoin. The UK wants their own stablecoin. So it's going to be a very different market. And then we talk about stability and we talk about Bitcoin, being not so much of the leader of the pack anymore. Then we look at all of this. We look at a crypto space which is made up of ultimately on-ramps with countries' own digital money or version like the digital pound or the digital euro, etc., being onboarding ramps for crypto itself, which you can see legitimizes everything. I'm going to trade euro Sol today, or I'm going to trade, the Japanese yen Sol today. And it's like, it shows the possibilities coming down the pipe, and it shows the possibilities of what the next move for the altcoins could be. But it also highlights that it could be very different, and it always will be very different from time. And we just have to look at the signal, just like we're talking about with the altcoin setups and how to trade them, right? We just have to wait, see where the direction of the market is going. And like when we started off with Ethereum today, just highlighting about, look, what's going on with this. It's just sitting pretty, waiting for the next move up. These are all insights which we can use to start building a picture. And what we will be next year will be clear when we're there. Now, that sounds really stupid, right? But there's a lot of commentators now saying 101 different things about what can happen next year. Me, James, all of those commentators cannot know for certain until we start to get some of these signals stacking up. And then we can say, okay, last year we were discussing these 4 potential scenarios, right? Which involved gold versus Bitcoin, which is talked about how maybe Bitcoin can be in a bear market when altcoins can have their run, all of this sort of thing. And then next year we'll be like, right, so I think we can rule out this possible scenario for 2026 because this has happened, right? And I think we can rule out this possible scenario for 2026 because this is how much is left with these two possibilities are likely in 2026 to happen. And we start narrowing it down until we have a clear picture. But then we arrive at the clear picture while it is happening, right? So we can all sit there and guess. We can place bets. But for me, as a trader, I will trade off signals and I will trade off increasing signals. So if I see that we're going a certain way next year into a bear market, I'll start making more short plays. I'll start posting more short setups. And it will be a gradual, slow process adjusting to the context. And that is all we can do as traders. Okay. Now you can take a position and you can say, I'm a Bitcoin bull in 2026. But ultimately, how is that getting probabilities in your favor? Right. So just trade what you see. Right now, Bitcoin isn't looking great. It's not looking great. And until it changes, then my position is going to be coming down, as it should be, because you can't say to yourself, well, I'm going to enter a long trade with Bitcoin. And I'll be like, well, why? Why are you entering a long trade with Bitcoin? Where's your signals? What have you seen? And you'll be like, well, I believe it's going to go up into 2026. And I'll be like, well, you might be right, for sure. Bitcoin likes to pull a rabbit out of his hat, for sure. But you can't trade on that because consistent trading requires consistent probabilities, right? And even the best traders, of course, have losing trades, right? You can win, you can continually win with a 50% success rate, but this is the game. So when you look at all these articles, I mean, look, this is the thing. I will read an article saying Bitcoin makes a strong recovery. Just the other day, just Bitcoin makes a strong recovery, and I'm like, what are you talking about? Bitcoin has stopped bleeding temporarily. But where's the bullish narrative? I was like, I'm not seeing it yet. If I read that article and it said to me, Bitcoin is making a strong recovery because we've broken out of an inverse head and shoulders on a significant time frame, and traders are going to be looking to come in on the flip side around 93K, then I'd be like, fine, I believe you now, right? Because you've given me something to trade off. But just all these articles like Bitcoin's going up, woo, Bitcoin's going down, it's going to zero, are just not helpful. And that's why as traders, we need to be about context. We need to be adaptive, as that's the best thing. It's like, you're a plumber, right? Every different house you go to install a boiler in is going to be different. You're going to have to put different screw holes. You're going to have to rework the pipes in different places. It's never going to be the same, and you've got to be adaptive, and that's the key. But yeah, so let's see. Right, ADA. Right. So sorry, Lola. Let me just check. I've got that right. ADA. Let's have a look at ADA. Let's see if I can find ADA before we finish, because I'm just ranting at people today. No, I haven't got ADA. Let's load up ADA. Let's see if I can find it. ADA. What's the most recent chart with ADA? Nope. Yeah, all right. Let's look at that one. I don't think this is a chart. No, I haven't got your chart. Let's see if I can find it. Have a quick look. Ooh, that might be it. Have a look. Yeah, this is it. Yeah, I've got your stuff marked on. Okay, so Lola, this was your exit point here. Okay, really straightforward. So this was your entry. Hoping for a long play, didn't happen. Right, it's okay. Now we've talked privately, Lola, about this, and how and I think we've both accepted that buying a long play here a couple of days after the October crash, not the best play, right? You just got to leave it and let it rest, right? But it's okay. Well, I've been there. Trust me, I've been there. I've been in this situation. This is the learning curve. And what I really admire, Lola, about the discussions we've had about this over the last few weeks is the fact you've been so open about it. Because, I mean, I've had terrible trades. I've done just this, right? And it's a learning experience. And this is the good thing, Lola, right? Because once you've come out of this, right, you will be so much more experienced. You will never make that mistake again. And you're a better trader and you've leveled up, right? And I know we've discussed this. It's not a massive position, so it's not a big deal, right? And I know you must treat every single trade, whether it's a $1 trade or a $1 million trade, as the same thing. But let's have a look. So that would have been your entrance, okay? That red line should have been written in your plan probably straight away, right? And then you would have seen, you know what? Okay, we've broken below it. I'm going to try and get out on the bearish retest, and that would have been it. And if you'd done that, we would have had a not a great loss, not a big loss, but not a great one. So it's would have been about 20% essentially, right? And that's not bad, right, to stomach it on your position. But ultimately now, unfortunately, we're struggling. ADA's struggling at the moment. And the reality is, you can't be waiting. It's highly likely that we'll get a recovery, right? But then you're going to do this again, you're just going to be stuck in a trade for months, right? So really unfortunate situation there, Lola. I've done it myself loads of times, and I slap myself for it, but it's a good lesson to learn, and I hope it's helpful. So I don't know what your approach should be now. You could say to yourself, okay, I'm just going to get, you could say, right, if Bitcoin does this, I'm going to get out here at the 200 MA. I'm going to look to get out here. And you could say, but if Bitcoin continues lower, I'm just going to get out right now and take everything off, right? Just take that 40% loss. So that's my suggestion to you. See what Bitcoin does next. If it gives us a little bit more of a bullish posture, then maybe set your sell order to what would be around 0.5 as a suggestion, which will be nice confluence with the 200, because again, you don't want to wait for the price actually to get above that, right? Sell it there. Take your loss, take the hit, right? And then next time, make sure when you part of your planning is that invalidation line, which you know to exit your trade. Because ultimately, I've been there, right? I've been at my desk and everything's gone wrong. And I've looked at my post-it note and it hasn't had the scenario for like a crash. It hasn't had that, right? So always I will have an invalidation line, which is when I get up in the middle of the night to make a trade and I'll be like, oh God, it's all gone wrong, right? I'll be like, okay, if it crosses my red line, I look to get out immediately. And then I get out immediately, right? It takes the emotion out of it. Because after a crash, everyone's like, we're going to have a recovery, but it just hasn't happened, unfortunately. So thank you for being so honest about that. You're going to be a really good trader after this. I can guarantee it, because these are the hard lessons which have been learned, right? And we have some parents in the world which are like, oh, just let the baby put his hand in the fire. They'll never do it again, right? And I'm not promoting that. Of course, I wouldn't be one of those parents, but there is an argument to it, right? For sure. You'll always be good at putting nails into the wall once you've hit your thumb twice, right? So that's the idea behind it. But let's just see what we can close on, because I am really, I think, trying people's patience here. Okay, let's just end with USDT 3-day. Now, USDT Tether, that little culprit at the moment, typically when it is ascending higher, that typically means that people have got money on the sidelines. They're either exiting their positions and they're waiting to invest them. So the fact that we've broken out to the upside of this pattern is not particularly great or reflective for the current state of the crypto market, which we see on the charts. Okay, so you'll see here that when we tapped that trend line previously back in September 2023, we had probably the best trading we've had for altcoins. I was trading at the time; it was fantastic, made a lot of money. Right, this downwards movement, and this is what we're looking for again. But you can see we're not in that. USDT dominance is essentially breaking higher out of this pattern with probabilities, of course, but we're not getting great altcoin trading as a result. And therefore, we really need to move back into this pattern and then maybe a move down to this lower trend line. So, this is the context. And these are all these sort of indices and charts you can use to really kind of get an idea of what the market is doing and what the health of the market is. So when you're looking to enter an altcoin trade, like some of the setups we've looked at today, like API, you look at this and you're like, okay, so what is this telling me? It's telling me smaller position size. It's telling me potentially the lower entry as opposed to the higher entry, right? And this is where context is important, right? And I'll leave you with that, I think, for today, right? Just to give you a broad, I've had a bit of a rant, right? But I really want it to be helpful to people, right? Because I really want people to be better, more successful traders, just like I am aspiring to be. And we are genuinely, anyone who's on this YouTube channel, anyone who's in the private group, anyone who's a member, we are all in the same community together. We are all together trying to help each other. And that's ultimately what this is about. We're trying to help each other. And sometimes that involves a little bit of tough love. Does that mean that we can work better? Does that mean me and James, as an example? I mean, I learned so much from James. As he's been doing this for such a long time. He's honestly, since I've been doing the stuff with him at Ola Prime, I've learned so much, and I did from other traders there as well, but James especially, and just the way he delivers all this kind of stuff. We all are on a journey. We all have a lot to learn, and I've been doing this a long time, but am I the best at it? Am I perfect at it? No, I am not, because it's always an equation about how much time do you have. There's always more charts to be done. There's more perspectives to be given, all of that kind of stuff. So, we have a part to play as well. And your responsibility, right, is as what we've discussed today. Our responsibility is to help you do that and facilitate that, right? And sometimes it will be just like, no, you do it yourself. Because here's the thing. I'll finish with this analogy, this metaphor, right, before we go. You're an apprentice for a builder, okay? You're an apprentice for a builder, and you're watching him for weeks building a brick wall, right? And I've tried it. It's difficult, right? It's not as easy as it looks, right? And you're watching and you're like, okay, this is cool. I get it, right? But then he says, right, you do it. It's a different game, right? But how do you stand on your own 2 feet when your mentor is not there and build that wall? You've got to build it yourself. You've got to take the plunge. You've got to chart things yourself. You've got to put the brick in yourself. You've got to put everything down, and you've got to do it yourself. It's the only way. You can't observe forever, right? You can't just be like, oh yeah, that's right, you put it there. You've got to do it yourself. You have to do that, right? And that's the way, and here it comes, you build a strong foundation and build a nice wall from it. And that's ultimately what the whole game is. But anyway, thank you so much for joining us today. And we've had a few new members as well, which is fantastic. Don't forget to check out James's video from earlier today. It's really, really good. Very important to listen to in the current markets. I'll be back tomorrow for altcoin gems. I haven't quite locked it down, but I'll give you a little insight. It's probably going to be Link, BNB, DGB, Ethereum, and Sol, and maybe I'll put API in there as well. I haven't quite decided, but Sol will be in there as well. So check that out for sure. And then after that, what we got? And then again, James will be back on Sunday with his usual live stream at the weekend, which is always a fun watch. But thanks for joining me today. Thanks for everyone's comments. Every single one who's commented is really insightful. It's really helpful, and really appreciate being here. But that's it for now. Take care, and I'll see you soon. All right, take care.